characterize should be, I mean, it's varying degrees of viable, but it'll more or less kind of work. Why don't we just go through the champions and I'll talk about that, yeah. And again, you can do other things with the champions, but I'm just going to describe the base archetypes here. So yeah, Teemo, you're going to want a mushroom deck. I don't know how you'd use him other than that. That's why I don't like him. Elise, spider deck. Similar deal with Teemo, except it's spiders. Lucian tends to feature Senna in the deck and goes ham with buffs and just deals crazy damage and is very oppressive. Braum, standard Freljord deck. He's just very defensive, keeps things going. Might work with Vlad. And you can also actually do Poros with him. I've never done a Poro deck personally because I find it kind of hokey, but yeah. There's nothing to be... Well, I guess, yeah, he can very much specialize in Poro decks, but other than that, he tends to work with Freljord stuff decently. Draven, what's his deal again? He's, he does a bunch of weird discard stuff, I think, wasn't it? It's been a while since I've actually seen Draven. I think he tends to work well with Jinx, and they all just discard stuff all over the place, and they're very aggro, and I think they just burn people down. Ezreal tends to work very well with spell decks. You just cast lots and lots of spells. He levels up. He gives you more spells. He's a spell slinger. So obviously he's kind of like... He works very well with his own region in general, so long as you have spells. Noxus, or not Noxus. Piltover and Zaun. Fiora, yeah, Fiora's super gimmicky. Fiora is generally built around a keep the Fiora alive deck. You can probably do other things because she's not terrible, but the fact that she doesn't have first strike and is not that tough means, yeah, you need ways of keeping her alive. Typically that means barrier, which is not that hard to do and is it's pretty easy to construct in expeditions. So yeah, that's where she's really good, but you can also build her in pre-con as well with like a Shen and stuff and just overload the deck with barriers and then give her, you know, stuff like enemies, or I mean, these two people strike each other, or everyone that's battling strikes each other kind of thing. And then she just does her gimmick with this thing here. When you've killed 4 enemies and survive, you win the game, and then you just win the game. And even if she doesn't do that, she's such an aggro magnet that you tend to waste the enemies a lot of resources and then win through other means. Callista fits... She's been nerfed, so she's harder to use. But nerfed, like, I think it was like last beta. But generally, yeah, functions around, you know, most types of Shadow Isle decks that, you know, are built around things dying. So yeah, it's just like things dying all over the place, so kind of like... Undying decks or ephemeral decks, stuff like that. Katarina is a bit weird. Her big shtick is that, yeah, she just refreshes turns every time. So she jumps in and out of play and just refreshes turns. I don't remember specifically what kind of decks you tend to see her with. Probably decks that involve lots of buffs. Again, it's been a while, so I don't remember specific. She's, like I said, weird, but like not... She might not be that weird, but she goes with sort of unusual deck structures. Zed works very well with ephemeral decks, Shadow Isle stuff, but he also works very well with any kind of deck that buffs him or keeps him alive, because he's very easy to transform. You get him out very early, and he's just generally a strong character. Granted, he's also flimsy, so he can get blown up pretty easily, but he's generally pretty easy to use. You can fit him into a lot of deck structures. Ashe is really good because she just keeps frostbiting stuff, so standard Freljord deck, freezing things, freeze stuff. Bad things happens when things are frozen, lock thing down, and just kill things while they're locked down. Jinx, yeah, discard, burn people down. You want to empty your hand as quickly as possible and get her effect to go off, and there's lots of discard-related cards. Shen, barrier deck. The typical usage is with Fiora, though you can probably do other things. Yasuo fits almost exclusively in stun recall decks, so he's pretty one-dimensional. Garen, pretty one-dimensional. He's one of the more basic characters. He's a pile of stats that regenerates, and when he levels, he rallies, so you can kind of really do whatever with him, with Demacia. Heimerdinger is also pretty weird. I don't like him because he creates RNG turrets, but yeah, once you've summoned a bunch of turrets and he starts summoning super turrets, he tends to work with, yeah, a bunch of weirds. He's like kind of a much weirder version of Ezreal almost, because, you know, you cast lots of spells and things happen and turrets show up. Karma works with generally spell ramp decks, a spell-heavy deck that ramps over time because you need the Enlightenment. So now probably works decently with Anivia since they nerfed Anivia. But yeah, just choose your spell character. Thresh, similar to Callista, just kind of built around things dying. So very, again, Shadow Isle. He's also pretty interesting with his gimmick. So you can have some huge damaging thing in the background, and then when he levels, he just suddenly flings some, 10/10 creature at the enemy or something. It's pretty funny. Vlad is pretty one-dimensional for what I'm seeing. There's probably several ways of using him, but I think the gimmick is usually the same. Where he'll just. I haven't tried this way, mind you, but you can probably create swarms of enemies and just keep like draining your own allies to damage the enemy. Or what I did last beta is I made a Noxus Freljord deck which was dependent, or rather was built around my own allies taking damage or regenerating, and then Vlad would just kept damaging them, but they wouldn't care or actually actively wanted to be damaged, and then he was used that way. Darius, again, very basic. We already went over him. He's a pile of stats that runs at the enemy, and he gets better from damaging the enemy. So works with standard Noxus decks or really almost anything else. That's why I was saying he's very easy to use early, because pile of stats, and even if you don't have much cards, you can build around him. Hecarim is just a really good card in general, as you would expect, because he's expensive, but he really shines with ephemeral decks. I used him in my favorite deck from the previous beta. You just swarm the enemy with ephemeral stuff, he transforms, and he's just like big Hecarim with big ephemeral stuff. Lux. Lux is a bit finicky, yeah. You cast spells and you get a big spell. I don't know, I guess she's kind of like the equivalent of a pile of big stats except with spells. I'm not actually a big fan of her. I'm not saying she's bad, but I just don't really like the idea of that, so I haven't played it very much. In fact, I don't think I've ever... No, I probably used her once. Well, I don't know, it doesn't matter. Anivia, she was gutted, but still good, because Anivia was stupid good last patch. She's still pretty oppressive, except now she doesn't get grotesquely good until you have 10 mana. So you just kind of keep sending her out, and she keeps spinning through stuff. So if you can... So she works with ramp better now. She's actually not... I mean, obviously she works with certain things better than others. Generalized Freljord decks will probably be able to use her fairly effectively, but... maybe a little bit more space. You got to maybe be a bit more careful with how you use her. But so long as you get Anivia out and have ways of her not having her get blown up, is still just going to be good. Tryndamere, he is the extreme version of pile of stats that runs at you, so not too much to worry about there. He's the most expensive character, but you can send him out. You don't have to worry about him dying, much like Anivia, because Anivia will also come back. But a more extreme version of that, I guess. At least once. So yeah, that's all there is to that. That's the general idea and the general sorts of decks. You maybe tend to cluster around these champions. And again, you can maybe do some other novel things, but that's the idea behind these characters. There you go. Oh, did they change that? I thought they used to be RNG, or maybe like one version is RNG. Turret in hand with equal cost. Is that new? Maybe they changed it at some point. Maybe it was the original beta was random. Oh, in any case, I still don't actually like Heimerdinger very much. But I'm not saying he's bad, but yeah, he just shits out turrets and he works with spells. Yeah, he's a giant beat stick. That's what Tryndamere is. Okay, well, that's the general overview of all the champions and the decks I go with. I hope that answers your question.